Hey there, and welcome to the Life at a Glance podcast. Or if you are watching me over on YouTube, so you can listen, so you can subscribe and listen, or you can watch me over on YouTube. We publish Tuesday, Wednesday ish. Don't you like that timing? I hope that you're doing well. And before we hop in today's episode, and it is a good one, it's like juicy. I want to give you an update on Bessie. And if you don't know who Bessie is, it's our 2001 Ford Excursion. And you can hear the story of Bessie in last week's podcast. So you're going to want all of those little juicy details. But just to get you up to speed on where she is, because this is Life at a Glance and this is life happening and unraveling each and every day, right? So we got her here successfully, and Daniel and I were getting ready to travel down to Miami to see his dad. And I said, let me just go check on the car. Now, I love the mechanic that we work with, but like he doesn't answer the phone. So he's very close to where we live. So I literally have to go down and just double check. Y'all, Thursday morning, we're getting ready to leave for 4 or 5 days, and I'm just buttoning things up. And I pull into the mechanic's lot, and there's a truck, and it is hooked up to my truck, and then the hood is open. And I went up, and Les and the guys were standing there, and they were chatting and having a conversation. And I walked up, and when I looked inside of the car, like inside of the hood where the engine and all the stuff is, I went, oh my gosh. Things that were supposed to have been done were not. Parts that were taken off the vehicle were now inside of the vehicle, the front door, or the front seat. And there were just things in like cups, and there were parts that were purchased and boxes from those new parts. And I just looked at Les and I said, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And he's like, it's okay. He said, I can't do anything this week. This is a bigger job than what I thought. And so next week, Monday or Tuesday, we'll put her back together, and then we'll start from zero, and we'll see what's wrong. And so that was the warm fuzzy that I had when I left on Thursday. And this week, I got a call from Les, and like, she's running. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got everything back together. He's like, no. He said, sometimes you have to pull things apart in order to test. And right now she's running and she's staying running. And I said, okay. He said, I just wanted to let you know, which was much faster than what I thought would happen. And then he said, we're going to put her back together, and then we're just going to start running her down the road and see what happens. So I was like, okay, there is such a confidence and a trust. And I think that there's something about that, right? Like, again, like you need to know a guy who knows all the guys. You need to have an electrician, a plumber, and a mechanic. Oh my gosh. Like, these are people that, you need your car. I mean, when we think about like the things that run our lives, our cars run our lives. And if you're like my family and use used vehicles, and Bessie has been tried and true. I mean, that girl's almost got 400,000 miles on her. And, you just it's like a part of me that's not here. So that is the next step in the saga. But today's episode, and I'll continue to keep you updated as we get Bestie back and as we get back on schedule. But today's episode, I know that this is going to strike a chord with you. I just know it. And I'm going to tell a story about it, and then I'll tell an updated story about it. And kind of, let me just dive into it. Handling public criticism. So did that just trigger you? Did you just start to like twitch a little bit? I think public criticism, one of the things that makes us scared about being business owners is, I like to call it calling my baby ugly. When I use that word, or I use that phrase inside of my communities, when I say call my baby ugly, I am open to what I call constructive criticism. And because that makes me better, and that makes the my customer experience better. So I am always open to calling my baby ugly. Several years ago, when I was running the sale, it was at the very end when consigners come and they pick up. So they drop all their stuff off. We organize it like a department store. And at the end, if you choose not to donate, we would put all of the items back in a pile where you could come and pick up your stuff. And at the end of the event, when consigners are at the point of picking up their stuff, I got to tell you, I'm exhausted. There is no mom exaggeration. It's literally 12, 14-hour days. And at that point, I would have been working 7 days because there's a setup, there is like the pre-sale, there's the sale, and then there's the breakdown, and then there's pickup. And I remember this one year, we obviously have a very organized way of pickup. It was at the end of pickup, and a lady came up to me, and she said, as I was pulling consignor numbers off a table, she said, I did not have my dollar dress. I mean, literally $1. And I said to her, okay, so I handled this for several years. And so it kind of went down the checklist. And she said, I said this back to her. And what she said back to me felt like a sucker punch. And all of the good things that happened with that event, I couldn't even think about them. The only thing that I obsessed about was her comments to me. And like, I still feel it today. Like, I mean, obviously, like it's standing out to me today, which kind of brings me to the reason why I'm even talking about this week is another situation happened where I'm not really sure why they asserted themselves to be the ones to try one of my products out and to let people know that they would circle back and share their experience. But she did. And that's okay because I feel confident about what it is we offer. When I think about that initial template that people purchase, so when you purchase, you're going to get access, and then you're going to get a video from me, and I'm welcoming you and I'm thanking you. And then the next step is that you can register for a live session where we implement. It's 30 minutes. I'm going to share with you just kind of the overview, step by step, frequently asked questions. I open it up for live questions, and I do a demo. Not only that, but I also have a community where if you get into it and you have questions, you can ask me there, all for a $27 product. And I do this because I want the whole customer experience. Whether you're spending 27 or whether you're spending 3,000, it is the whole customer experience. And I want you to know that we have thought about all of the details. Do we always get them right? No. And I never put myself up on that banner, on that shelf. But anyway, she purchased and she circled back. And the words that she used to describe the template, I took very personally. And in the beginning, I'm like, okay, how am I going to react to this? And I think it's kind of like one of the first points, separating fact from emotion. That's really, really hard. When you are handling public criticism, separating fact from emotion is probably the one of the hardest things that you can do. Because if we're not emotional about our products, then and the services that we offer, to me, it's like this level of caring and this level of investment that we make. I mean, this is our baby and we are sharing our baby. And so her initial comment was that it was a shell. And I was like, okay, let me think about like what that is and like take the emotion out, because I'm like, oh, well, I do this, I do this, I do this. And that's where I really want you to see and separate the emotion and the fact, because even like you do all of the things and you think it's amazing, if someone else isn't seeing the value or isn't experiencing the product the way you want, that's where you have an area of opportunity. And it's really the call the baby ugly. Like, I want that feedback. So when I saw that, I responded, and responded professionally. But what ended up happening was that there started to be an exchange, and where a potential customer who would have had a very different experience potentially, like, you have to think about context when you're purchasing a product and the support that they may not have expected that we share for a $27 product. I got a return video yesterday from a lady who was like, oh my gosh, I have never purchased a product and received something like this. This is amazing. And she wanted to share who she was and what her business was, and then how excited she was. So I'm like, okay, that's amazing, right? That's like the seesaw, right, of being the entrepreneur. And that kind of leads me like, so fact, emotion, separate it. How are you going to respond? And a lot of times, even in the inbox, we have self service, but then Heather is in the inbox. We do use templates to address the most commonly asked questions. And the reason being is because we do take it personally. It is like, we want to be professional. And that's that. And I want to be like, you can count on me, right? When you purchase something from me. So the next point here, and I'm trying to feel my way through this, is filter the source and the intent. So the person went on to share how many, like, she does a calendar and it's like 20 tabs color coded and like all of the other things. And I'm like, okay, well, if all of that is happening, then why did you have a need for the template to begin with? I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm going through and thinking. And then the comment about it being a shell, then I'm immediately going, all right, well, let me go in and see how I can improve the template itself. And I don't know, like, the intent, if, like, a lot of times, like, you see this on stage all the time. Like, you have the announcer, and the announcer will introduce somebody. And when they introduce somebody, there is a hug, there is a handshake. That is an exchange of power, right? This template has been purchased, and I need to get an exact number, over 8,000 times. And the intent is that people feel overwhelmed and they need to get organized. It is a visual way and a quick link system way to get organized, right? And so I think it checks the box off. I also think that, and I'm so thankful for customers that circle back on my ads and they will share their experience. This is the most amazing thing. I've been using this for 3 years. They'll ask about updates, and it's almost like the thread becomes a customer service thread. So I don't know if the intent is to that pass off and exchange of being a I don't want to call it like influencer, but like that exchange of power. I almost kind of think that. And social media kind of gives us free reign and free license to just, I mean, say whatever we want to say without any repercussions, right? And that's again why I try to stay on top of comments. It's a reason why I respond to those comments. It's a reason why we really do all of the steps and the touch points that we do as part of our customer journey, right? Um, and so the final part here for today around really receiving public criticism. So separating fact from emotion and filtering the source of the intent, right? The source and intent. Finally, just kind of looking, turn criticism into fuel. And so I think that we're not always going to know all of the answers. Um, when we were with the software that stopped working and literally said a digital product, there were no more products to sell, and people were blowing up the thread on that, I could have retreated in, because if I'm a systems person, then why is this system not working when it literally is not your fault? It is the software fault. Um, and we've since moved. I could have retreated in and go, I just can't take this. I just can't do this anymore. Or I could use that opportunity to say, yep, we're systems people and the system broke down and here's what we're doing about it. And to be honest with you, it's engagement on your ad, it's engagement on your social media post. So I see it all the time when people go into groups and they're like, oh my gosh, somebody like commented blah 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 on my ad. What should I do with it? Should I delete it? Should I hide it? Now, if they're self-promoting things, which there have been some kind of questionable posts sometimes on my ads, like I'll hide those just because I'm like, I don't want my customer journey to like go down that path. But to have a conversation and an open conversation, it's like, okay, thank you for the feedback. And let that fuel me to say, all right, how can I improve the customer experience? If, say, someone doesn't come to live implementation, how can I make that easier? And I was like, well, I will record some Loom videos on the various topics inside of the template. And then they can have those right there. And so I want it to be as user friendly as possible. And I let it really fuel me to even have a better version of myself and a better version of the template. Now you're like, Rhonda, you were reading way too much into this. And I don't think I am, because I think that public criticism is a huge fear factor for entrepreneurs. And public criticism, you want to go off and hide. And I know as a company how we operate. And I know the customer journey, that when someone purchases from me, that we help move them through. And I'm going to use their comments. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. Even if like it was weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks ago. Thank you for that feedback. And even one of my customers chimed in, is like, oh, well, I've had the opposite experience. So I think it's like a lot of it is like having context, like getting context. I know that when I go into Amazon and I start reading reviews, and I read like so many good reviews and then the handful of bad reviews, it's like kind of weighing out, and then seeing how many purchases were made, right? Kind of weighing out those pros and cons. And I'm like, okay, I'm willing to go all in, right? And so I want to encourage you, when you are criticized publicly or your product and your service is criticized publicly, kind of going through those 3 points. So separate fact from emotion. That's probably the hardest one to do. To filter the source and intent. Okay, I think that's a good way to think about like where they are and really what their purpose was. And okay, it, are they trying to assert themselves, or are they just just a friend of mine called and was talking about like a customer and what the customer journey was like, all in a positive way. Like they were just looking for feedback because after like so much investment, the customer asked for a refund, and they're like, I'm just trying to see like my blind spot here. Help me understand. Sometimes it's just not a good fit. It's just not a good fit, and just bless and release. And then finally, turning that criticism to fuel. I don't recommend like taking that criticism and keeping it pent up and just running off that, because that's exhausting. But looking for ways that you can improve the product or service. When we write it out, when we look at it all, go, yeah, you know what? They're right. There is an opportunity for me here, and I can do this, and I can improve it this way. And so it's just a little reminder. I think about it's a template. It is a mighty template. And to be honest with you, it's not just one. I mean, in the main product, there are two amazing templates. And then there's like 10 or 11 templates for your life. So it's like the lifestyle command center. So it's the business command center and it's the lifestyle command center. And so it's just something that happened this week that made me stop and reflect. And I just felt like, whoops, it's life at a glance. It is real. And I should have turned my phone off. It's one of those things that's going to happen. And I knew that it was a hot topic, that if you've had this happen to you, um, how, like, steps that you can take to handle it. Or if you have never had it happen, but it's a fear, like if you're criticized on a post, like, what do you do with that? And so I hope that that gives you kind of food for thought, let you know you're not alone. You're never alone. We are all dealing with um, the same challenges, both in our business and in our life. All right. So that's it for today's episode. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And we'll be back Tuesday, Wednesday ish next week. Take care. We'll talk soon.